Yeah. So, okay. All right. Well, with that, Jimmy, let's dive into today's chapter, which is Arya 9, another short chapter. I was actually like listening ahead, which sometimes I do. So, sometimes I'm listening to just the like this week's chapter, or sometime I'll let it play and listen to a few chapters ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I know we keep saying like we're getting close to the big event. We're really getting close to the big event now. But once we hit that, it's just like it's like a whirlwind. After that, like every chapter down the line until the end of the book is just like it's like a sprint.
Yes.
Once we actually hit the red wedding, and we are very, very close to it here.
How
So
about the final line of this chapter?
yeah.
We might be able to make it to your uncle's bloody wedding.
Ooh, well, hey, we're about to get into
Oh,
it. So
George.
here we go. Arya attempts to kill the Hound at night while the man is asleep, but he awakens and takes the rock from her hands. They reach Lord Harroway's town, but find it flooded. Sandor promises to pay some ferrymen to take them across the Trident, but gives them only the parchment Lord Beric had given him, promising reimbursement after the war. Arya tells Sandor that she had once been captured by his brother, and the Hound finds it amusing that Gregor never knew who he caught. Clegane says, I'll be sure to tell him that before I cut his heart out. She asks why he would kill his brother, and the Hound asks, didn't she ever want to kill a brother or sister? He realizes from Arya's expression that the wolf bitch hates the pretty bird. Arya and her sister don't get along. Sandor admits that maybe he is a monster for killing so many, but also tells her that he saved Sansa's life when the mob tried to kill her. The Hound informs her that he is taking her to the twins and will ransom her to Robb and perhaps join the young wolf's service, because even a dog gets tired of being kicked.
Dang.
Yeah.
Fantastic, man.
I don't think there's any chance that they would have let him join.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Robb may have Catelyn would have the only way that could happen is if it was to set up even more Catelyn being like, Robb, what are you doing?
Yeah, another maybe folly or odd
Yeah,
move from
that
Robb.
would be the only way in which I could see George actually writing that.
Mm-hmm. Man, is Hound the best side character in the series?
Oh yeah, the Hound is
I mean, some people probably argue he's a main character, but I consider any non-POV character.
in the show. The Hound is he's in my top 3.
Oh yeah, show Hound. I mean,
So good, yeah,
yeah,
it's
so much charm. Do you feel the Hound is a bit more gritty when you're reading him rather than watching him? You know what I'm saying? Like, he's so mean to this little girl, Arya, which we know she's been through a bunch of stuff, but like I find the Hound to be more troubling, I guess, when I read the books.
yeah. I don't know. I've never, even when I was reading it and even watching it, like the Hound to me immediately just came across as a good guy. I mean,
Well, I agree with this as far as the show. I actually agree. Day
I even
one,
think
I was
I
like, I
even
like
I
this
even
guy.
think in the book, I think it's just obvious, like from the minute you see how much everyone rips on, how like much, especially like Joffrey rips on him,
Yeah.
that I think it just sort of felt pretty obvious to me that like either this guy's gonna be a good guy or he's really not that bad. Like yeah, he's obviously morally gray and kills the butcher's boy,
Very
and like I'm not,
much. Yeah.
yeah, he definitely does things, but on the scale, he's far more on the like you're probably gonna be rooting for this guy and be on his side than view him as a total enemy.
Yeah. I mean, if
I
you
think
think
it's
about
also
Lannister,
easy because you look at his brother, he kind of has the Tyrion thing,
oh yeah.
right? Or it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, Tyrion's a Lannister, but he's not Cersei or Jamie or Joffrey or
Yeah. Especially
Tywin.
at the beginning of
Like,
the series, right? Yeah.
yeah, same thing. Like you look at him, but you also look at the mountain, and you're like, all right,
Yeah. It kind of gets away from like the idea that all like what people in this world in Westeros actually believe that if you're from a certain house, you act a certain way and you are a certain type of person, and we can just kind of categorize you that way, and we can move on from that, right? And how many times does the Hound get accosted for the things that his brother has actually done? Right? Like it's just the Cleganes, the
right,
Lannisters, the Starks, and they're all supposed to be the same. And what George is doing by providing us more intimate POVs and conversations is he's showing that obviously that's not how the world works, right? That people can be an exception to their bloodline or family banner or whatever else. I think it just takes a little longer for me to get there. with the Hound in the books. And maybe also it's because of the direct contrast of Arya. So like Arya's done a lot of things at this point that I would consider to be almost like fantastic, like fantastical. That fact that she's like killed someone and she's escaped Harrenhal and she's doing all these things, Jack and Hagar. But at the end of the day, you almost forget she's like 9. She's 8 or 9 years old. And watching the Hound interact with her provides like a really interesting contrast because we look at this girl who we think is like, pretty tough and able to do things that she shouldn't be able to do at this point in her life. But then you compare her to someone like the Hound who is, extremely powerful, but also older, more experienced, done way more vile things. And you start to see that the Hound is what Arya could end up becoming.
Mm-hmm.
And you almost don't want that for her while also still having sympathy for the Hound, which is why their dynamic of the relationship is kind of wonderful. And I think the Hound, in some ways, is actually trying to steer Arya away. Now, on the show, they actually deliver on this relationship dynamic when he tells her it's not worth it, leave, right? And then he goes and finishes the business with his brother. But in the books, we haven't got there yet. But it's definitely, to me, the Hound almost being like, you don't want to be like me. You don't want to be all about vengeance and this and that. So it's a great contrast to show that Arya still has potential not to be like this dark entity that she's kind of going down the path of. And also furthering Arya's quest for agency and person and who her person is. She is now Arya Stark again after not being Arya Stark for a while. She claimed her name earlier in the book. And now she's out of the Brotherhood Without Banners, but now she's being controlled by the Hound. And she's again trying to find a way to get back to her family so she can have agency and have a choice in where she's going and what she's doing. And the Hound, I think, is the final piece of this to where now we'll see her go off the Bravos, and then she has another kind of mentor with the House of Black and White. But I think for him, it's about him like giving her a warning, like don't become like me, which will play off in later books. So I just love the dynamic between Arya and the Hound. I've always found it fascinating. And I think that this is a good example of how George takes two characters and actually makes them better because they're together.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and their journey together, even though it's actually pretty short.
In the book, yeah.
And and it's like you said, it's such an interesting dynamic because from the get-go, Arya, and she even says in this chapter, right, like, I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah.
Right? And like, she's got the list and she's got the names and everything. Yeah. And like by the end of their journey together, she kind of starts to like him a little bit.
Yeah,
right? That's why she doesn't kill him.
Yeah, begrudgingly, I think that she has maybe taken him off her list in a different way. Which is really good character development for Arya, because it would have been really easy just to write a vengeful 9-year-old assassin girl who just kills without regard. But and this is an example where we see maybe a little bit of that tenderness that Ned Stark had.
Yeah. So I'll read a little bit here, and this is at the end of the chapter too, and I'll paraphrase and skip some of it here. But Clegane offered her a chunk of cheese on the point of his dagger. You're a little fool. What good would it do you if you did get away? You'd just get caught by somebody worse. I would not, she insisted. There is no one worse. You never knew my brother. Gregor once killed a man for snoring, his own man. When he grinned, the burned side of his face pulled tight, twisting his mouth in a queer, unpleasant way. He had no lips on that side, and only the stump of an ear. So I did so know your brother. Maybe the mountain was worse now that Arya thought about it. Him and Dunson and Polliver and Raff the Sweetling and the Tickler. So like even right there, right? Mm-hmm. So Arya and you're thinking like, how could he be any worse? And then she literally talks about like how his face is, so disfigured. But then immediately thinks, well, actually maybe his brother is worse. George literally paints him as a monster and then is like, no, but there's still a worse monster out there.
Well, and who made him look like that would have been the person who they're speaking of at the time. So it's almost an example of like, he is kind of telling the truth because he's experienced this as well from his brother. This is also beautiful writing in a manner. I mean, obviously beautiful is a weird way of putting it, but it's actually great writing. And in a lot of fantasy I read, there's so many static descriptions, I hear it all the time. The 3 pages of description for every single person, and sometimes you wonder, well, what was that for? Why are we doing static descriptions? George is describing his face in that moment. He's had thousands of pages now, right, to
Mhm.
have described that face, and maybe he
Like
has another
but yeah, certainly not to this detail.
and who is seeing that face and taking note of those details. And like you said, it's almost telling a story through his features. So that description is actually going a long way for characterization and for the realization of Arya to see that, like, well, maybe not everyone, maybe he's not as the most evil. Maybe his brother actually is worse. And it shows the Hound to the reader in a different light as well. And I think you can garner, sorry, some sympathy for him in this moment. So I think that's great writing and a great description and a great time to put in that description.
Yeah, and it continues on a little bit here too as she starts talking about it. He starts talking about like how he wants to kill his brother, and then she talks about like he actually caught me once, and then he realizes how stupid he was for not realizing who he had. But then he goes on to say he's like, it wasn't the first time he talked of killing the mountain, but he's your brother. Arya said, "Didn't you ever have a brother you wanted to kill?" He laughed again, or maybe a sister. He must have seen something in her face then, for he leaned closer. Sansa, that's it, isn't it? The wolf bitch wants to kill the pretty bird. No, Arya spat back at him. I'd like to kill you. Because I hacked your little friend into, I've killed a lot more than him, I promise you. You think that makes me some monster. Well, maybe it does, but I saved your sister's life too. The day the mob pulled her off her horse, I cut through them and brought her back to the castle. Else she would have gotten what Lolly Stokeworth got. And she sang for me. You didn't know that, did you? Your sister sang me a sweet little song. You're lying, she said at once. You don't know half as much as you think you do. The Blackwater? Where in the seven hells do you think we are? Where do you think we're going? And then she's thinking back to King's Landing. And then he's
Mhm.
like, no, he's like, stupid, blind little wolf bitch, which also, by the way, blind little wolf bitch. She will be blind later. So that's a cool little thing there.
Nice.
Right. And then he talks about like, I'm gonna take you to Trident to see your brother. So again, like that line there, I really like is where she's shocked that he would want to kill his brother. And
Yeah.
then I think to her, that's also another thing of like, well, maybe he isn't as bad. And then one other thing just before about Arya here, before I pass it over to you, Jimmy. And maybe this is where they got it for the show. Remember like at the beginning of season 7, and I put a lot of this up to I just feel like they didn't know what to do with Littlefinger, like how to get rid
Mhm.
of him. But there was that like little teasing of, well, maybe Arya is out for Sansa because of the node, and oh, you were there with Joffrey and all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is like maybe that's where they pulled some of this from, because there's really nothing more about
Maybe.
it. Or maybe that is something that George was like, there's going to be some tension between the two.
Well, there's definitely tension earlier in the
But
series. I
I don't know. I think it might just be a line that maybe over interpreting, but that is where I remember back in season 7, some people referencing some of this stuff here and saying, well, that might be it. Or maybe it was just they just didn't know what to do. So like, we'll just have Arya and Sansa against each other.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, would there maybe be tension in the books later on? Possibly, because that was a. I mean, it's a very real thing from the earlier books. But for me personally, I think that we are watching them go on a journey where they realize that family is kind of all they have, and whenever they reunite, I think it's going to be a positive experience. I also think the difference between the Hound wanting to kill his brother and Arya not really wanting to kill Sansa is like a very important distinction between the two. And one of the reasons why maybe Arya will look back on this and be like, well, I never want to get that far gone.
Right.
So, and she's being trained as an assassin in A Dance with Dragons. So, like, by all means, she has every opportunity to have the ability to kill Sansa if she ever wanted to. But it's going to be about using that power for the good, I think. So, certainly will be tension. It's a big moment and it has to happen. I think. I think Sansa and Arya have to reunite.
Oh, they did. They definitely will. I don't have any
But even Sansa thinks about Arya in a different lens. She might even start out with, "Oh my, annoying little sister Arya," and then being like, "But I miss her." There's some reflection on her part too.
yeah. So yeah, it continues on a little bit here too, and then they talks about like even a dog gets tired of being kicked. If this young wolf has the wits the gods gave a toad, he'll make me a lordling and beg me to enter his service. He needs me. though he may not know it yet. Maybe I'll even kill Gregor for him. He'd like that. He'll never take you," she spat back. "Not you. Then I'll take as much gold as I can carry, laugh in his face, and ride off. If he doesn't take me, he'd be wise to kill me, but he won't. Too much his father's son. From what I hear, fine with me. Either way, I win, and so do you, she-wolf. So stop whimpering and snapping at me. I'm sick of it. Keep your mouth shut and do as I tell you, and maybe we'll be in time for your uncle's bloody wedding."
What a final line of the chapter. But I also want to point out something that I just really love about so much of George's writing again is that a lot of plots move forward and there's failures and successes, but no series more than this one do things always go to shit for every character. Like Hound has this super cool plan and like completely falls apart. And it's so much better that it does for us as readers because it's way more entertaining. But like the Hound is like, this is the plan. There's a couple ways this could go. Robb might take me and he might not. None of that happens. Like none of that happens in the next few chapters. It all goes to shit like it always does. And that's because a lot of people cannot account for what other people's motivations are in this world because information travels at a limited speed, which is one of my favorite devices that George is using here. And he even uses it with Arya. Arya had no idea about Blackwater. He had no idea that the Hound had ran away, right? There was no way for her to know that information. So she's getting educated right now about like current events, at least from the Hound's perspective.
Yeah.
And the Hound can't account for everything that's going on behind the scenes with the Boltons and the Lannisters. So it's just like everyone's plans fall apart because they just have lack of vision.
Because it's an enormous game of telephone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's so dramatic.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hey, let me pull up. And this is Arya's. This is really like her, the list, right? So we see the list here. She huddled down and held her tongue. Valar Morghulis, she thought sullenly. Sir Ilyn, Sir Meryn, King Joffrey, Queen Cersei, Dunsen, Polliver, Wrath the Sweetling, Sir Gregor, and the Ticker, and the Hound, the Hound, the Hound. So we know on this list, some of these people she's not going to get. She obviously doesn't get Joffrey. And
I think this is a subversion of her storyline.
Right. She doesn't get Joffrey. You could argue she doesn't get the Mountain. I mean, technically speaking, Sir Gregor does die due to Oberyn, I guess, or maybe he does. I don't know. That's why the whole head of the Mountain thing is totally kind of different in the books. And the Hound, and she may not get Cersei either.
No, I don't think she gets Cersei. No.
Yeah, one character she could get that just disappears from the show is Sir Ilyn.
Yeah, and Ilyn's a weird one because he trains with Jaime after Jaime loses his hand. Like Ilyn Payne, like becomes like I don't know, very different from the show, obviously.
I think why did he disappear from that? I think the actor died, and
oh really?
Yeah, maybe I have to look it up. I know that the training they swapped out with Bronn, which I think did work better for the show.
Yeah, you got to streamline stuff. Yeah, and Bronn was popular. The Sir Ilyn Payne's, I mean, he's relevant in the series in many ways. And remember, they talk about, man, if he could talk, what he would tell us. And I've always wondered, are we going to see like some fantastical element where?
No, the actor did die, but it wasn't during Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay. Well, rest in peace to him.
Although it is, man, it is weird. I guess seeing pictures of him and like other things because it's so just like Ilyn Payne.
Yeah.
Like he's like a guitar player, and all I'm seeing here, let me pull this up here. He's like playing guitar, and all I can see is Ilyn Payne.
Dude, that is he's on the axe. He usually has a different type of axe.
Yeah, so weird. But yeah, I think he just he just disappears, and then I guess he was mentioned, but then we just never see him again.
I think he has a more significant role in the books, and like I said, with his tongue being removed, obviously it was a huge downer because he has so much information because he was around so many pivotal moments. Do you think there's a chance there's a fantastical moment later in the series where he gets his tongue back?
No,
Matt, you're supposed to agree with every crazy theory.
Like
you're literally that guy. Like,
nah, I don't agree with that.
You always go, and then I'm the one who's always like, it's not true. What you're stabbing me in the back right now? Live?
I'm not stabbing you in the back. I don't know. I don't know what his. A lot of people think he may have some big role to play in the future. I don't know that he's going to have a big
No,
role to
he's
play.
not, and he's not gonna grow back his tongue. But I thought it'd be funny.
Well, I mean, there's always the possibility, I suppose,
Oh, here we go.
but
The more outlandish I make it seem, the more likely Matt is to agree with it. Actually,
well, we got a lot of pushback on our Benjamin thing. It's really weird.
wait, what?
Yeah, well, it's just so TikTok and YouTube and stuff like that, or the cold hands thing.
Wait, did they think it's mentioned?
Well, no. Some people were saying that it couldn't be Dunk because they're like, well, how would Dunk get up there? Because Dunk died at Summerhall. It's like, well, you got to look at the
Well,
text.
I'm filling in the.
It's not
Yeah,
entirely clear that Dunk died at
I mean,
Summerhall.
it's pure speculation.
Well, because the ink was blotted,
Yeah,
right? So
that's right.
it's an incomplete story purposely.
Yeah.
It's an incomplete story, and then some people were saying it would be too old. It's like, well, it's possible that Cold Hands is even older than Dunk the Tall.
Oh yeah, it could be someone totally different as long as they're not saying it's Benjen. Like we know it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
Benjen.
There's no way it's Benjamin.
Oh,
In the
I'm okay
in
if
the
they
book.
think I'm dumb. That's fine.
Nah, but
It's a fun theory. And
somebody left us an amazing comment. I'll have to pull it up. We might have to do like a full.
was it
We could
Lady
even,
Ashley? It's always Lady Ashley.
Lady Ashley does always leave. No, somebody left us a comment and they were talking about how Cold Hands is actually like future Bran stuck in time, and
Oh,
it's
jeez.
no, it's really good actually.
Okay, I mean, I'll go down the.
We'll have
I'll
to do.
entertain
We're
anything.
gonna have to do a Raven. No, it was really good actually. It
I
was
will entertain anything.
because it talks about how like how Cold Hands is your monster and stuff like that, dude. It's no, it's really good actually. Like so
It's
we will
actually Jojen reincarnated.
well, maybe. But okay, let's pull up. I'll pull up some of the quotes and stuff of this chapter because again, this is actually a pretty short chapter. There's a little bit of lore dumping, that we get here, but I mean, really, the summary kind of really sums it up. It's not a particularly long chapter, and I think the big part of this is really that end conversation, which we already went over, which is the Arya Hound dynamic, where
Yeah.
they're she's beginning to really realize that he's not maybe as bad as she immediately had thought.
Tons of
But
tension there still, obviously, but
yeah, so I'll just some stuff I thought was kind of interesting on Reddit. So some people are saying, quote of the chapter: so stop whimpering and snapping at me, I'm sick of it. Keep your mouth shut and do as I tell you, and maybe we'll be in time for your uncle's bloody wedding. As Jimmy had pointed out, bloody wedding, come on, George. There's straight up foreshadowing. Knights have no bloody honor. Time you learn that, old man. The ferry won't cross back till morning, he said, and that lot won't be taking paper promises from the next fools to come along. If your friends are chasing us, they're going to need to be bloody strong swimmers. While Clegane isn't the most honorable person in Westeros, he isn't the stupidest either. He manages to get a free ride across the river and prevents the Brotherhood without banners from doing the same thing in one fell swoop. Not bad. So
pretty
it
good.
also kind of shows you he does really know his way around the countryside, which I think is also something that Arya picks up from him. I know when we talk about it, it's like more of his like moral compass, and
Yeah.
in killing people and thinking more about like what killing means, because that's going to become a big part of her. It's also kind of like some good survival skills that she picks up as well, which I think will be part, I think, similar to what we saw in the show when she comes back and she is on her own, right? When she meets up with Ed Sheeran.
Yeah. No. No, T&D. Don't do it. Hank.
I'm really not super familiar with Ed Sheeran's music. I mean, like I've heard it, but I don't like, really like follow or listen to it or whatever. So it was a much bigger deal for a lot of other people than me.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. I didn't I wasn't as mad about Ed Sheeran being in the show as everyone else on the planet, but I didn't necessarily love it.
Yeah. Some other comments, people are saying, hey, Sandor is actually pretty patient with Arya. The little twit is trying to kill him at every opportunity, and he threatens, yells, and ties her up and gives her tons of warnings, but he doesn't beat her to keep her in line.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like he never strikes her, which is interesting. Like it's kind of like he's the kind of guy where he's just like putting his hand down and she's just like, like
Yeah.
trying to get it, like waving his arms, trying to hit him, but can't actually do it. And then by the end, I think they do come along. And which do you like? Do you like the book version of how they separate more or the show version?
I actually think I enjoy the book version more. I know that it's kind of a cool, like it's a culmination of a lot of things, and then obviously we have Brienne in there as well. Like in the show, right? Because
Yeah,
Brienne and the Hound fight, and that is epic, by the way. I love that scene, but I actually like Brienne's story in the books more.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I hated that.
Did you?
Yeah, I just like because I'm like the entire time I'm actually rooting for the Hound.
Yeah, and you don't.
And
Yeah, you don't
and
really.
it's like, "Bran, what the fuck are you doing?" Like he Arya's like, "I'm fine. Like I'm good."
I'm good, dude.
And yeah, like if anything, it's like you're the stranger danger, right?
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
it's like I don't know you. Like why am I going to go with you? And Brands. So it worked, I
It's
think.
fine. Yeah,
It like
it's spectacle. It's
it
drama.
worked in the show where you don't have as much time for everything else, but
Yeah, I think
yeah,
Brienne in the book is more
I
interesting.
kind of I mean it's good. It's one of those things where I didn't like it for Brienne. I was like I
Mhm.
didn't I was actively rooting against her. I was rooting for the Hound to kick her ass, to be entirely like but that
Well,
then that's
yeah, I get it. He's on a redemption arc. Yeah.
yeah, so it's one of those things I think is just it's way better in the books.
Yeah, I would agree. I just think I also think Brienne's storyline stands alone more in the
Mhm.
books. I mean, she's such a pivotal piece of Feast for Crows.
Mhm.
And runs in direct parallel with Jamie. And I don't know. I just thought that entire storyline was better in the books, and especially for how it ended. You know, a lot of people hated the Brienne and Jamie ending. I have thoughts about it, but um, I think Brienne in the books is going to be a lot more compelling once we see her kind of realize, you know, in many ways that a knight isn't exactly what you think it is, which is very parallel to Dunk. I
Yeah,
mean, Dunk goes to the same thing.
I think one of the reasons they did it in the show was also I feel like they wanted to give Brienne some wins against have her fight like other well-known people to build up the idea that she is actually that legitimate. Because then later we see her fight Arya. I mean, they're training, like they're sparring against each other, like
Yeah.
that, that fight. And Bran does get Arya a little bit.
Hmm.
I mean, Arya ends up really winning the whole thing, but Brienne does hold her own against Arya.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that was really another reason why they did that was to try
Probably.
and okay, show Brienne versus the Hound, like, and it was kind of one of those things where it's like they're fighting. They weren't fighting on the best surface.
Oh yeah, it's a mess.
It's like it's just a mess. Like they're on like a rocky hill and stuff like that. And then he ends up just kind of falling, tumbling down. So it wasn't really like, hey, like the Hound versus the Viper, where they're fighting on
Right,
flat
perfectly
surface,
flat,
perfectly
sanctioned
flat.
violence,
You
right.
get to pick whatever, because I kind of think the Hound would beat her.
I think you're just misogynistic, Matt.
Wow. But then at the same time, it's like the Hound gets hit by Beric and Darien. I don't know.
Hey, any given Sunday.
Yeah, but I think the Hound. We're gonna see the Hound do Clegane Bowl, and we'll
We'll
see
see
what
how
happens.
that goes. I wonder if that'll
Yeah,
be in Dream for Spring or
yeah.